Junkies, welcome back. I am KK, your numero uno love junkie. Missed you guys. I'm super excited today. Okay, so last time I talked about some of the assumptions that we have when approaching forgiveness that kind of keep us from doing forgiveness at all. But there's also what I like to call magical expectations that hold us back from extending forgiveness as well, or at least from approaching forgiveness in a manner that makes forgiveness actually effective. And that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so last time I touched a little bit on 2 Corinthians verse 3:16. And then let me just remind you, this is what it says, and this is the Amplified Bible. It says, but whenever a person turns in repentance to the Lord, the veil is stripped off and taken away. We lose our ability to see that person clearly. That there is this veil, as it were, that kind of comes upon us, and we're now no longer able to see that person that we once trusted the same way. We're not able to see that parent that we depended on in the same way. And that it just brings this discomfort. And I'm talking specifically more so, I think, about those relationships that are really close to us, that cause those deep wounds. Now, when we're unable to see that person for who they once were, we're uncomfortable. Now, being in proximity to that person all of a sudden makes us feel some type of way, right? Now, you can't stand to be around them. And it's just that phrase, oh, I can't stand to look at you, or I can't stand to be around you. Just that phrase alone is a telling of the discomfort that we're holding on the inside of ourselves, right? And as human beings, we don't like to be uncomfortable on any level. We will do anything to get rid of that discomfort on the inside. Some people take drugs. Some people drink alcohol to that out of their minds. Some people just distract themselves to no end with whatever they can distract themselves with, just to avoid the discomfort that comes from the pain experienced during an offense. So we'll do anything, right, to get rid of that discomfort. And so that part of that do anything, particularly for those who are trying to forgive and want to actually extend forgiveness, it's kind of like this is where this magical expectation comes from. It comes from this desire to get rid of the discomfort. So in my magical expectations, I will expect things like, I expect that when I forgive you, I'm going to immediately feel different about that person and about what they did. So my choosing to forgive you is not only going to get rid of this discomfort, I'm no longer going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to immediately feel different about you and different about what you've done. And so this person will extend, right, forgiveness with this belief or this expectation in mind, and then find that it not happen. Like, how come I didn't immediately, I chose to I forgive you, I let it go. How come I don't immediately feel differently about you? Why am I still feeling some type of way when you enter into the room, right? Another magical expectation is that when I forgive, I will forget. Right? We hear that all the time, right? Forgive and forget, forgive and forget. And we also hear especially like if you're Christian and you go to church, you'll hear them say that scripture over and over. God tosses our sins into the sea of forgetfulness. Yes, that's true. That is in the Bible. But guess what, boo? You don't get a sea. Like, you may choose to not dwell upon what your mind and your emotions and your sensory perception actually remembers. You may choose not to dwell on it, but you just can't forget that it happened altogether. It just unfortunately doesn't necessarily work that way. See, unforgiveness and resentment and anger it's alive. It's like this living thing. It's like this beast you have to feed, you know, and it just takes on different forms as it seeps into your mind, as it seeps into your attitude, your emotions, your disposition. We don't think of anger and resentment as being alive. You know, tonight, one of my beautiful sisters in Christ, we were in church tonight, and she just gave this really, we were talking, and she gave this really neat, I don't know if it was a story or a joke because I laughed out loud, but she talked about this man. He goes to a psychiatrist, and he's telling the psychiatrist, there's like these dogs fighting inside of me all the time. There's this dark dog, this black dog, and this white dog, and this darkness and this light, and they're just fighting in me all the time, and I just don't know what to do. And the doctor looks at him and says, well, what dog are you feeding? I laughed so hard because when she said it, it was like, duh, you know what I mean? The one that you feed is the one that gets fed, is the one that is out, that wins the most, right? Are you feeding negativity, or are you feeding positivity, right? Are you feeding the bad things, or are you feeding the good things? If you are feeding resentment and anger in your life, then that is what is going to show up, and you will find yourself operating in these things. Intolerance, you know, being passive aggressive, being a negative Nancy, lacking tact, being a fault finder, being judgmental. You're going to find yourself in all of these things. That is the fruit of anger and resentment and unforgiveness, is these things. It lives, it breathes, right? And it gets fed every time you operate in one of these things. Now, the best story, okay, to really demonstrate these magical expectations that I've come across is this really neat story in the Bible. Now, this story is a total hot mess. These women are a hot mess, okay? We got Sarah, who at this point of the story, his name is Sarai. Her name hadn't changed yet. Sometimes people in the Bible go through name changes when their disposition changes, when the purpose of their life changes, all of that kind of stuff. They go through some name changes, you know, Simon and then Paul, and then, I mean, they go through name changes. She went from Sarai to Sarah. You know, she had to graduate a few things, okay? And I'm believing that anger and unforgiveness in her life was definitely one of them. Here's the story. Here's the deal. Now, in Genesis chapter 16, you can go there. I will go there. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to tell you the story, and we'll hit on a few bits, okay? Okay. In this story, you find Sarai, who is the mistress of Hagar, or rather, Hagar is a slave. She is Sarai's slave. Now, it doesn't really tell us, the funny thing in this story is it doesn't really tell us how Hagar became a slave. You know, so we could go in believing or inferring, as it were, that Hagar could have some or feel some type of way already being a slave. Nobody likes to be a slave, okay? Now, granted, in that particular time and in that culture, one of the most common ways of becoming a slave was debt. You know, you owed that family something and couldn't pay or whatever. Then they give up one of their kids to be enslaved to that family for a certain period of time so that the debt could be paid. So that was one of the common ways. But then, you know, sometimes people were sold into slavery. That happened. But poverty was usually the root of it. Either way, okay, just think of yourself as Hagar. You could feel some type of way about being in slavery to somebody. So Sarai was having some fertility issues, right? Now, unfortunately, this is a major issue in our current day and time. IVF, all of these treatments that we've got going on right now are to address the exorbitant number of women these days who are having problems having a baby. So many can relate. Okay, she was having some fertility issues, right? She couldn't have a baby, or she kept trying with Abraham, and they couldn't have a baby. So she gets the bright idea. Now, okay, God has already prophesied. God has already spoken to this couple. He's already told them I'm going to handle it. But Sarai gets it in her head. Look, it's been 10 years. We've been out here. We've been trying it. God didn't come through. Maybe, right? God needs a little help. little help. That's all. How many times do we get in our head to try to help God out with something? Okay, well, that's what she was. Daddy just needs a little help. God just needs a little help. Love just needs a little help, right? So she gave Hagar, her Egyptian slave, to her husband. Said, well, maybe you just need to lay with her. Okay, I'm having trouble having babies. You just lay with her. You can have a child through her, and that will just be our wonderful miracle child that God has prophesied over our lives. Isn't that just wonderful? And so Abraham, what man is gonna say no? Okay, what? Can we just be real about that for like God's sake? What man is gonna say no? Anyway, so of course Abraham is like, hey, I got you, boo, I got you, I can do this. So he does his thing, and Hagar is pregnant. Now, once Hagar realizes that she's pregnant, she starts having a bad attitude towards Sarai. And Sarai's like, wait a minute. Wait, what? And instead of addressing Hagar about the situation, now she's angry, she's upset, she's offended, she's now going to blame, right? Fault finding and blaming. Now she's going to blame her husband. You see, I gave you that woman to lay down with her. She had that baby, and now she's giving me a hard time. That's your fault, right? And her husband was like, boo. That's all on you. She was your slave before she hit my bed. And she's your choice. She was yours before. She's yours now. Whatever problem you got with her, you deal with it. So they're going back and forth. And so she goes back to Hagar and she treats her harshly over the issue. And I do mean harsh. Harsh enough for Hagar to get even more of a bad attitude and then just up and leave the house. And she's like, okay, you gonna be like that? Now, I got the treasure inside of me. You couldn't have no babies, but now I got the baby. You gonna think you gonna come back here and treat me any old kind of way? I'll show you. I will leave here with your treasure. And then what you gonna do? Toodles, deuces, boo. Okay, so she was out, right? She was out. She wasn't having it. And she wasn't trying to come back. She was so pissed. She's out there in the desert, in the wilderness, okay? And it's cold out there. I don't know if you've ever been to Israel, but it just seems like the whole place is a desert. And it is cold out there, okay? But she wasn't trying to come back. It took an angel of God to come to Hagar to get her to go back to Sarai's house and Abraham's house. Now, okay, that's not the whole story. I mean, it goes into, she goes back and she has her son whose name is Ishmael, but then she gets pregnant and has Isaac. I mean, it's just this whole ordeal. God's got blessings for them both, okay? But let's just focus on this situation that they found themselves in and the anger and the resentment that was brewing between the two of them and inside of them already, okay? So if we look really quickly, I think, now that I've spoken, I think between the two women, the one who exemplifies those three expectations the best would be Sarai. Because Sarai expected that, first of all, she expected that she could handle, like, her sleeping with my man. I can handle that. I can handle that. I may feel some type of way for like a hot minute, but I could just let it go and everything will be just fine. Give it some time, right? And then she expected that when she forgave that she would forget. Right? Because give it some time, right? I may be pissed for a hot minute, but I can let it go and I'm not going to feel bad about her. I'm not even going to feel bad about the child, right? Give it some time. I'm going to love her like I love her now, and I'm going to love the child. Everything's going to be okay. And we're going to have this magical, beautiful baby. Once I see the baby, I'm just going to love the baby. And she probably thought to herself, well, you know what? Also, give it some time and I'll just forget. I'll forget that, they ever laid together. I'll forget how we got the baby, it may not have been exactly the way I thought and everything, but give it some time. I'll forget about it. We'll all just be one big happy family. Okay. She also thought that she wasn't going to get triggered, right? That there wasn't going to be, right, any kind of thing, physical representation of anything going on in there, no memory of the incident or none of that was going to give her any ongoing negative attachment to the situation, right? So that's the third, right, magical expectation that sometimes we hold. So she thought all of these things. Now let's just kind of go back and take a quick look at how that actually went down and what actually took place. Okay, so if we look really quick at Genesis 16, verse 3, It says, then Sarai, Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abraham, to be his wife. Okay? Now, God is a holy God. Okay, I can get into all of marriage and the holiness of that and how he sanctified that and how that is where he expects sex to go down. Okay, he's not into what is that, fornication. You know, he's not into multiple partners. Okay, there is no polyamory. Okay, in God's eyes, unless everybody that you are polyamorous with as a man then becomes your wife. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't a situation where Abraham could just lay down with her, you know, just cause that's my maid, so we could just do what we want to do. So if those two were going to lay together and that was the plan, then Hagar had to be his wife. Now notice something. Notice that her position in the household had changed. Hagar now was a wife and not just a slave to a mistress. Now, so not only did her position change, she may be the second wife. She may not have been the first wife. First wife always had much more authority than any other wife that came after. However, she was no longer just a slave either. And so let's just look at the situation now for what it is. Let's not take for granted what is going down is. In verse 4 it says, excuse me, so he went to Hagar, right? Okay, so he did his thing. Wasn't gonna say no, what man would. We won't judge, right? And she conceived, it says. It says, and when she saw that she conceived, her mistress became despised in her eye. Now she's pissed. Now she's just pissed. Like, not only am I in here cooking your food, washing your stanky clothes, you know, cleaning up after you all day long. Now I had to lay with your husband, and now I have got to lay down and have a child with a man that I don't even love. It's not even my man. He's not even my man. Okay? Oh, wait, no, now that's her husband. But come on, when you are with a man and you don't love a man, that's not your man. You know, you don't feel like that's your man. It's not that he became her husband because she was in love with him. It's because of what she had to do, the purpose that somebody else set out for her to do. She's pissed. She's pissed. And now she resents Sarai. And it's saying here, she resented her so much that she despised her. Can you just imagine the attitude that Sarai had to deal with from day in and day out? The rolling of the eyes, the sucking of the teeth, the murmuring, the halfway done chores. Come on. And then daring you to say something about it. Right? 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 That those little things now that Hagar is doing every day, because that resentment and that anger is alive in her. It's seeped into her mind. It's seeped into her heart. It's seeped into her attitude. Right? And so now it's a living thing that's living inside of her, and it's got a face, and it's got a disposition. Now it's manifesting in everything that she does, and how she, in every way that she is behaving towards Sarai. And now Sarai is pissed. Okay, now she's pissed. You know, because now all that magical, what she thought, oh, I can just, you know, she can just have my man for just a night, or, you know, he can have her. She probably didn't even think of it. She didn't probably even give Hagar a second thought. She's just a slave. She's gonna lay with him and do her thing, you know. And she's gonna have this child and have my baby, and she's gonna like it. I mean, she didn't even give her a second thought. How entitled must you be to give a human being, right, with their own will, their own mind, their own emotions? How entitled must Sarai's mentality have been to even think and conceive that would have been a good thing? She was in some very magical expectations about how she thought that was going to go down, and how she thought she was going to let go and move past that situation. Now she can't let go. because Hagar is not going to let her let go. Hagar is going to suck her teeth, roll her eyes, and halfway do chores and rub it in her face when that belly starts to grow. I got your baby. Right? She's not going to let her let it go. And then there's physical manifestations to trigger Sarai all over the house. Belly is growing. Now Hagar is getting fat. Right? And the bigger she gets, the more resentful Sarai gets. This is not going down the way that she expected. Why isn't it so easy? Why can't I just let go? Why can't we just be the happy family that I thought we would be? Why can't I just let go the way I thought that I would be able to let go? And so as that anger and as that resentment begin to live and breathe and come alive on the inside of her, now she finds herself blaming her husband. Look at what it says, okay? In verse 5, it says, Sarai said to Abraham, my wrong be upon you, she said. Digger. She said, I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw she conceived, I became despised in her eyes. Now she's blaming her husband. Now Sarai is so full of anger and resentment. And now she is blaming and fault finding. It seeped into her mind, right? It's living now on the inside of her and manifesting in her relationship with her husband towards now how she treats him. Right? We don't think these things are connected. For Sarai, it's not that she didn't think there was a need to forgive. She knew that she'd have to let go. She just thought she'd be able to do it. And she thought that it was going to look a certain kind of way. She thought that it was going to be instant, right? That she'd get over it. You know, it would just be one night, right? It wasn't going to be, not like he loved her. Okay, so she'd be a wife. She's not the first wife. And I get to say, right? I can control how often she goes in that room and doesn't. Right? I'm the first wife. I still get to say, I can do this. I can do this. You see, there are mindsets going on here. There are Sarai and her entitled mindset, right? The actions changed the situation long before it ever hit the change that had to happen in their minds. They did the thing. They changed the situation in their actions. Hagar went into that tent and slept with Abraham and created a change in that household long before that change ever reached their minds. Right? Because in Sarai's eyes, she's getting all angry and pissed and resentful because how come this woman is now not doing what I tell her to do? Because she's no longer a slave. She is also a wife. And she expected to be treated differently, and she was not. So her resentment was already increasing. Not only was she not being treated differently, she was carrying the baby that you forced her to have. All the more, right? It just keeps going on. Once that anger and resentment is in you, it doesn't take much to feed it. It doesn't take much to keep it going, keep building, right? The funny thing is we're a lot like Sarai in this particular situation too, in that it's not just okay. She's offended with Hagar, but she doesn't see or doesn't address it the way that she should address it because she had this magical expectation going on in her mind that she could just, deal with Sarai. Sarai is not barely considered in her mind, right? She is barely considered. Sarai is so entitled, that Hagar is barely considered in her mind. She's so entitled. That's my slave. She do whatever I tell her to do. She's not considered as a person with her own mind, her own feelings, her own anything. Not even when she went in to sleep with her husband and came out, went in a wife and came out a mother and a wife. So not only was Sarai not respecting her now as a wife, but also not respecting her as a wife and now a mother. Because in Sarai's mind, in her magical thinking, she didn't need. She's just a slave, so I can just let it go. It's no big deal, no big deal. I could just let it go. I'm not going to think differently of her or anything. But who did she think differently of? Her husband. She thought differently of him. Oh, I sent her in there to be with you, and so now she come out and she got a problem with me? Now she got a problem with her husband. Because see, in her little plan and her little magical thinking of how she could let go of the situation, there was no need, right? To think that she would ever be angry and harsh towards Sarai, because Sarai is just a part of her plan. It's her husband. Now you putting it down and shaking it down on me a lot. What did you shake down on her that she can come out here and be all cray cray with me? What you giving her, you didn't give me. This story is a hot mess. You see what I'm saying? I got appointed and anointed these people, by the way. Okay? That just goes to show he's not looking for perfect people. Get that out your mind. Those are lies. I swear, the story is a hot mess. But it's a beautiful example of what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful example of how we can get into this magical thinking, these magical expectations over forgiveness, over letting go, that cause us to approach letting go in the wrong way. And so that when we don't see it happening, right, when those expectations don't come to pass, now forgiveness is ineffective. Now we just forget it. I guess I'm not going to forgive then. No, until we see it for what it is and acknowledge it for what it is, then we'll just continue on in the same cycle. I hope this is helpful, my love junkies. I was super excited to bring this to you today. And I'm super excited for the next one too. So keep your eye out. I love you guys. In the meantime, stay in love with love, because God is love. Bye.